Tosh Dilek, welcome to Tibet TV's weekly analysis. Today we are going to raise a big question on the new law of the United States of America, Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020. The question is whether this new law possesses a challenge or can be viewed as an opportunity for the government of India. To answer this question, I'm joined by one of Tibet's steadfast supporters and prolific writer, Mr. Vijay Kranti. Welcome to Tibet TV, Mr. Vijay Kranti.
Namaste. Namaskar.
So recently, Foundation for Nonviolent Alternatives organized a webinar on the Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020, a challenge or an opportunity based on your article. So question is, how should the government of India take it? A challenge or an opportunity? How so?
As far as government of India is concerned, the question of Tibet has been already on its radar. Only the thing is that India has been a reluctant player on this subject. But with China attacking India, especially in on the northern borders, and the trouble they have created in Ladakh, it has become a very serious issue now. And now we are noticing that Indian government is taking not only note of it, it is becoming serious. And I think this law passed by American Congress is going to be a big moral booster for India. And the way this law supports Tibet and is so frankly stating various points, all those things are very suitable to India's thinking and India's national interest vis-a-vis Tibet and China.
Okay, sir. Now, I'll come to the Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020 later. But now, in that same webinar, a new concept called digital colonialism was discussed and believed that it is happening in Tibet. So what does it mean and how severe are its consequences?
You know, I call what Chinese government is doing for last few years in Tibet as digital colonialism. Actually, China is practicing many dimensions of colonialism. One of them is demographic colonialism. Initially, they started with the military colonialism. They occupied Tibet forcibly, and then they tried to tame the Tibetan people, and when they did not succeed, then they started adopting different technologies. Let us come back to digital colonialism. You know, after 2008, when Chinese suddenly discovered that Tibetan anger was widespread, not only within Tar, which they claim is Tibet, but it was more pronounced in other areas, of Tibet, Kham and Amdo, which they had cunningly, broken from Tibet and put them into Yunnan, Sichuan, Qinghai, and Gansu. So these protests were more prominent in those areas which China doesn't say is Tibet. So Tibetan bosses, the bosses of Tibet in China, they were shocked to see that the reports they were getting for last 60 years from their comrades in Tibet, that everything is good and Tibetans are very happy about Chinese occupation of Tibet or Chinese presence there. And they suddenly discovered that people are very unhappy. So the reports they were getting were very wrong. So after 2008, Chinese government, they changed the strategy, or I would say they improved upon their previous colonial games. So the digital technologies which they had acquired specially for Beijing Olympics, for surveillance and using cameras and artificial intelligence, they applied it very heavily on Tibet in last 6, 7, 8 years. And we discover that in today's Tibet, and not, when I say Tibet, it's not only Tar, it is other provinces also where Tibetans live. The Chinese have installed hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of surveillance cameras everywhere, even in schools and in monasteries, on the roads, in the streets, even in people's homes to monitor people. And recently they have added another digital dimension to it. they have made it compulsory for every Tibetan to hold a digital, a smart card, which means any Tibetan who comes out of his home step or her, they step out of their homes, somebody somewhere watching in a control room knows that this person is moving. And as the person moves, they know where this person is going. And at the same time, artificial intelligence would help them in identifying other Tibetans, which means they have algorithms that they can even predict that so many people are trying to reach a specific point, which means they might be up to some trouble or demonstration or something. And the security agencies of China, they reach before the demonstrators reach there. So this is why we are finding that in Tibet, the public demonstrations, the number and frequency has come down drastically. And in the same proportion, self-immolations have increased, because here the best of Chinese security agencies cannot identify an immolator in advance. So here is an individual suddenly pours petrol on himself or herself and commits self-immolation. So this is another shape of Tibetan resistance, and why I call it digital colonialism, because unfortunately, when the whole world is using digital technology for the welfare of people, for development, for solving social and political and economic problems of the people, China is using it to perpetuate its colonialism in Tibet, in Xinjiang, in South Mongolia.
Sir, now coming to your article in Vivekananda International Foundation, you have written extensively on the Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020. Could you elaborate our audience the feature of this new law?
This law is, we should understand it. Number one, this law is not very absolutely new law. It is actually in a way, the American Congress, they decided to compile all the resolutions and decisions American government had applied in the past. They put them all together on Tibet to have a consolidated policy on Tibet. So in the title itself, it says it is an improvement or a revision of 2002 TPSA. So one thing, it is not new, but its consolidation and being it organized into a single law is very significant. It has so many dimensions. Here there is, if I would say that it's a number one, it shows the national consensus of America, the way Democrats and Republicans, when they were fighting a very, very, if I use the word, dirty war outside the House, they were cooperating with each other on passing this resolution on Tibet. That shows there is a national consensus in America. That is one significant point. And many people are critical of President Trump. I think the way President Trump has taken steps to make it a law, and he has been quite quick in giving a logical end to this bill and making it a law. That only shows that he understands the seriousness of Tibetan occupation by China, and he wanted to leave President Biden emboldened and capable and powerful to deal with China. So there I see, President Trump did a very intelligent game. And then I would say that it hits China where it hurts most. So all the clauses, if you go in details, it hurts China, and that is something unique about it. And their one major point is on reincarnation. And this is first time when American law very specifically says that the reincarnation of whether it is Dalai Lama or all other tulkus of Tibet, it is none of the business of China. It is exclusively the domain of Tibetan people, of Dalai Lama himself. This is something very significant. And I'm sure India should take note of it, and India should follow the same line, because it should be Indian line. And the way China wants to install the tulkus certified by Communist Party of China, that is very shameful. So this directly challenges that. This is important. And it is on dialogue between Dharamsala and Beijing. Again, very significant, this law. It says that in this dialogue, they have rather revised the conditions. Earlier, they wanted China to have a dialogue with Dalai Lama. But now they say that the Sikyong and the CTA are integral part of that dialogue, which means that this law gives an infinite life to the dialogue, to the institution of Dalai Lama, to the power of Tibetan refugee community, because it says either have dialogue with Dalai Lama or elected representatives of Tibet. So that makes it very significant. This is a big change, I would say. And then there are other issues which I would say that it directly hits at the demographic colonialism being adopted by China in Tibet. So where it is challenging the relocation of nomads and bringing in Han population into Tibet. So this law directly challenges it. This is again, India should also take a note of it. So that makes it very important. And it is recognizing Tibetan identity. So that these things are something which I would say are very, very important. And one more point where this law is very significant is that it is calling the government of America, which means not only Trump government, it makes it binding for every coming government to work on Tibet and to have a diplomatic alliance with like-minded countries. And also that is spreading it all over the world, and India should take a clue from it, that if America thinks of it, then why not India should also join this kind of alliance. And last one big point is where America is saying that diplomatic reciprocity. Here they are asking the future governments of China to not allow China to open any new consulate in America as long as China does not allow America to have its consulate in Lhasa. So these are significant points.
So now, in that same article, you have mentioned some takeaways and important lessons of Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020 for India. So question is, can you please tell us what are they and what does India gain out of takeaways you suggest?
Yeah, I would say that this law by America actually fulfills one of the voids in the international diplomatic forums where India was hesitant to take on China on the issue of Tibet. And this law has provided that. It has filled that void, provided a big playground to America, to Indian governments, to have their own independent policy on Tibet by getting encouragement and support from other countries, including America. That is one thing. So one point is the diplomatic alliance law talks about that there should be an international alliance of like-minded democracies of the world to deal with China on Tibet. I think this is where India should be quite open and aggressive, and India should join such. And there are so many countries who want to take action. They are all waiting for India to take some steps on Tibet. And whether it is Japan, it is Australia, it is Germany, it is European Union, it is America, it is Canada, they are all waiting for India to take a stand. So I think this is important, one takeaway for India. And then the river waters, it is talking about the way China is exploiting river waters of Tibet. This law has underlined it. So India should take clue from it, and India should stand on its own feet to challenge the government of China of the way they are exploiting Tibetan waters, and especially using water resources of Tibet as a water bomb against India. For example, the dams on Brahmaputra, India should raise this issue and take China head on this issue and support Tibet on this. There are in the past the American laws have already mentioned Tibet as an occupied country. India should take a clue from that. India should directly say Tibet is an occupied country. Human rights in Tibet is a very serious concern for India, and India should stand by Tibetan people, and they are finding support from the government of from America, and then moreover on Ladakh, the way China has been aggressive against India. Now India should realize that India has so many supporters across the world who are ready to stand by India if India decides to challenge China. And I think here India should challenge China that in the way you are claiming lands of India in Ladakh or Arunachal Pradesh, then India should tell China that morally, legally, politically, it is you have no rights to do it because you are making claims while standing illegally on an occupied country called Tibet. So I think India has so many takeaway points from this.
Okay, sir. Sir, one of the key features of Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020 is the recognition of Central Tibetan Administration and Sikyong, the President of Central Tibetan Administration. So question is, how important do you think is this recognition, and should the government of India follow the suit?
Oh, yes, very much. I think it is in India's interest that the government of India should, even if it is not possible to recognize CTA as the genuine government of Tibet at this stage, but it is Indian government is very much within rights if it upgrades the standard of CTA and its Sikyong. And I think Indian government should do that. Unfortunately, so far, the technical status of CTA has been of like an NGO in India. Although India gives them all the freedom, but technically speaking, its status is almost like an NGO. Indian government can improve upon it and give a better status, which gives more playground to CTA. For example, in Delhi, formally getting mixed up with the other embassies and ambassadors and taking public stand. So I think India should do it.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, we're going to end our discussion here. I would like to thank Mr. Vijay Kranti for joining our program. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.